It's December, so what does that mean? Mandatory Christmas episode, and for me that means just filming next to a tree. You know, just the cliche. And speaking of cliches, for this video we're gonna go over one of the most cliche lists of all time, the top 10 Super Nintendo video games. The Super Nintendo, some would argue to be the best video game console of all time. Yeah, I can see why it's considered to be so. It had a massive library of AAA titles, games that continue to be brought up as a reference to what makes a good game. And today I'm counting down my personal top 10, and as always, it's a subjective list, it's not the definitive top 10, but this is it.
Sequence start. 10.
I consider F-Zero to be the best racing franchise out there, even better than Mario Kart. It's fast, sleek, the music is amazing. Knowing that if you blow up, you really blow up keeps the adrenaline high. It's not like Mario Kart where a little cloud monster will come and save you if you fall off the track. The SNES F-Zero is extremely dated compared to its subsequent sequels, but it's still one of the most fun games to play regardless. Even with F-Zero GX at hand, I still find myself playing the SNES game from time to time.
9.
Earthworm Jim was one of my childhood icons. I love the toys, I love the cartoon, and the video games were just as memorable. The animation is so good that it feels like you're watching an interactive cartoon. The humor was good too, ranging from bosses that fight you on unicycles to bosses that are pretty much just gags. And my favorite thing about this game? The music. By far one of the best Super Nintendo soundtracks out there. And gameplay was great too. Only the first level plays like the typical run and gun platformer. The rest have some kind of novelty which keeps gameplay feeling fresh and original from the beginning until the very end. They just don't make games like Earthworm Jim 2 anymore. Now I'm picking the second game over the first game because even though the first game's good, compared to the Sega Genesis version, the first game is absolutely terrible. Better graphics don't make up for a missing level and missing sound bites. And this is Super Nintendo, so I was expecting it to be better in every single category. Overall, Earthworm Jim 2 for the Super Nintendo returned to the status quo of the Super Nintendo version usually being the better game.
8.
Kirbys Superstar is an interesting case. It's not just one great game, but rather it's a bunch of different games in one. Although the general gameplay is consistent throughout, the unique feel of each short game is really great. Some could argue that the biggest flaw with the game would be the difficulty, which, yeah, I would agree. The game is incredibly easy, with only Boss Marathon being the only mode that ever feels difficult. What makes this game great is the presentation. The gameplay is great, the graphics are great, the music. Oh man, the music! You take one listen and these tunes will stay stuck in your head for the rest of the day. It's one of those games that you pop back in from time to time just to look and listen to it.
7.
Super Mario Bros. All-Stars is an interesting case too. This game is a compilation which includes Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, and 3, and the Lost Levels, which is actually Mario Bros. 2 in Japan. Each game has received graphical and technical upgrades to better fit the Super Nintendo. Most games included in the game itself aren't that strong on their own on a list of Super Nintendo games. I mean, Mario 1 and 2 are very simple when compared to Super Mario World. Don't get me wrong, they're great games, but on a list of Super Nintendo games, it kinda helps that they're clumped up together. But what truly helps this game make it on this list of top 10 Super Nintendo games is the fact that it includes Super Mario Bros. 3. And if you watch my top 10 Mario games list, you'd know I prefer Mario 3 over Super Mario World for a bunch of reasons. Add in Mario Bros. 1 and 2 and you got Mario All-Stars, a game that truly deserves being in the number 7 spot. And even Mario Lost Levels, as much as I'm not particularly fond of that game, is still okay as an added bonus. The game isn't terrible, it just isn't worthy of being Mario 2. All that said, Mario All-Stars is an amazing game, even if it's mostly because of Mario Bros. 3. And I guess there is Mario All-Stars plus Super Mario World, so I guess there's that.
6.
Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Castlevania series. I mean, I enjoyed the first Castlevania game and the third one was alright. Way too difficult for me to say I really loved it. But the fourth one was just plain fun. The atmosphere is amazing. You really get to feel like you know what Dracula's castle and the surrounding areas hold. The music is just as atmospheric. It's not the kind that gets stuck in my head like, say, Kirbys Superstar's music, but when playing the game, it works well. One of my biggest complaints with the first Castlevania game was that the controls are way too stiff, and that's not the case here. The controls feel natural and is what I consider to be the whip equivalent to Contra's guns. You just point and shoot. Easy. Castlevania IV, a game so fun that not even a Castlevania fan loves it.
5.
If there's one series that I do love, however, it's the Donkey Kong Country series. Amazing graphics, smooth gameplay, and that music. I think you guys are starting to notice a pattern here. Music to me is so important when it comes to choosing which games will solidify in my heart as timeless classics. So the question is, which Donkey Kong Country deserves the spot on the list? Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2 had amazing music and atmosphere. Now, some would say Donkey Kong Country 1 deserves the spot over 2 because it was the first and had the strongest wow factor. Well, to that I say, no. It's Donkey Kong Country 2 that will take the spot. Donkey Kong Country was good, but there are just so many more memorable songs in Donkey Kong Country 2, including one of the best songs in video game history, period, Sticker Brush Symphony. I know music is subjective, but listen to those strings, that's pushing the Super Nintendo to the limit. As for controls, well, in Donkey Kong Country, you got Donkey Kong and Diddy, who felt like a smaller and slightly faster version of Donkey Kong. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but didn't Donkey Kong feel slower and heavier? In Donkey Kong Country, you go with Diddy instead of Donkey Kong, and Dixie instead of Diddy, who I'm pretty positive is slower, but she can fly. And level design is better in my opinion. The levels are more difficult and I enjoyed them much more. Whenever I play a Donkey Kong Country game, it is pretty much always this one. Donkey Kong Country 1 feels way too easy. That and getting the DK coins and the Lost World levels in DKC 2 add more depth to the overall experience. It just felt like the better game, and this isn't to knock on Donkey Kong Country 1, that's a really good game, but Donkey Kong Country 2, man, that was a blast.
4.
What happens when you take one of the most iconic developers of the 90s and one of the most iconic franchises of the 90s and put them together? This. Ah yeah, Turtles in Time. This game was my childhood. Just listen to that music. What made this game amazing was that it was better than the arcade game. Keep in mind, this was during a time when the arcade version looked and sounded like this. And the home port looked and sounded like this.
Sonic boom! Sonic boom!
You had this?
Sub-Zero.
And that.
Sub-Zero.
And if you were one of the unfortunate ones, you had... I don't care if it had the blood code. When it looks and sounds like this, a little red won't change up the experience. Now, it's cool now that the games are cheaper and we can buy them and we can appreciate, you know, the blood code and all that stuff. But when these games came out and they were like 40 to 50 whatever dollars, I would be pretty disappointed if I paid 50 bucks for a little bit of red when I could have had the Super Nintendo, which, yeah, no violence, but at least it looks and sounds better. And technically, yeah, the arcade version of Turtles in Time had better music and better animations, and obviously 4-player co-op. The Super Nintendo had not only an extra level, it had better controls with its combo system. Grabs and throws could be done on command, and the difficulty is challenging. The arcade version was designed to eat up quarters. Turtles in Time on the Super Nintendo feels like a real game, and a game I wouldn't mind having over the arcade version. It's amazing how the Super Nintendo was able to handle all that.
3.
Now I know I talked about this game in my top 10 Mario games, and if you haven't watched that, there isn't much I can say. It's the RPG that defied all my rules. I don't like RPGs, I find them slow and boring. This one, of course, was helped by the music. Roll it. The Mario elements implemented into this game make the RPG elements easier to handle. Time hits allow for the battles to feel engaging. Critical hits aren't a thing of chance, but rather of skill. The characters are, well, okay. I don't get the appeal of Geno, but whatever. To me, Bowser was the best character in the game. In terms of difficulty, there are so many parts where you can bunker down and grind up levels, so unless you're super impatient, odds are the final boss won't be so difficult. And I know in the past I said I don't like grinding, but when the battles themselves allow for those time hits where like if you hit the A button at the right moment you can do more damage, I didn't mind it. Super Mario RPG, a game with a title so silly it's like Tetris, puzzle game, or Metroid, adventure platformer.
2.
Now I know this game tends to make it on the #1 spot on most people's lists, and all for great reasons. The music is amazing. How about that Dark World theme? And the puzzles? They're still alright. I will admit though, after Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and so on came out, this game does feel rather easy. But does that make the experience any less enjoyable? Nope. The game is still amazing just from how it's constructed. It's truly a work of art. Getting from beginning to end is really satisfying, and once you reach the end, it's like, dang. It's that sad feeling when a favorite show ends. You wish it could go on for more, but at the same time, it was the perfect length, and any more or any less could damper the experience. If you own a Wii or a Wii U, you need to get this game. Now, I would say seek out an original cartridge, but considering how ridiculous retro game prices have gotten, seriously, it's stupid. The $8 that you pay to download this game is hardly anything. For $8, getting all that is Link to the Past is a steal. It's completely worth it. Alright, well before we get to #1, here is an honorable mention of a game that didn't quite make the list, but is one of my personal favorite games ever on the Super Nintendo. This game, in its own genre, isn't that great, I mean compared to other flying shoot-em-ups at the time. Gradius 3 had the ability to customize ships. Darius Twin was pretty much one ship and the power-ups you get along the way. Darius Twin had already been done when it came out, so it wasn't anything revolutionary. There's a reason why when people talk about Super Nintendo flying shoot-em-ups, you know, they mention games like Gradius 3, UN Squadron, and rarely Darius Twin. But you know what this game had that they didn't have? One of the best soundtracks in video game history, period. Oh, trust me, Gradius 3 had great music. It was made by Konami, of course, but every single track on Darius Twin is a winner. And I listed this game as an honorable mention instead of actually being on the list because, you know, I can admit that the game isn't that great compared to other games on this list. But I will die believing that this game deserves to be among the ranks of Turtles in Time and Link to the Past and all the other greats. Even if nobody agrees with me, I will die believing that. Just because of the soundtrack. Probably just because of the soundtrack. The soundtrack makes the game. And the #1 Super Nintendo game is...
1.
Y'all saw this one coming. If it isn't Link to the Past, it's probably Super Metroid. And believe me, I had a hard time choosing between this game and Link to the Past. Link to the Past had better music, but Super Metroid had better atmosphere. The planet really does feel large, whereas in Link to the Past, I never really felt lost. Both games have maps, but Super Metroid's digital map is chillingly bare and empty, giving it a realistic science fiction feel. Link to the Past is pretty comforting. Super Metroid's ending didn't quite make me feel the same way Link to the Past ending did. When I beat Super Metroid, it felt more like, you know, the end of a day's work. With Link to the Past, it felt much more grand. At the beginning, you live with your uncle, you see him fall, and you go on to become a part of something larger. But the reason why Super Metroid takes the cake as being the #1 Super Nintendo game over Link to the Past is that Super Metroid felt like a movie. Link to the Past felt like a video game. A great video game, but a video game nonetheless. The haunting and chilling music of Super Metroid sets the tone right from the very beginning to the very end. And to me, that's what ultimately convinces me that it's the #1 Super Nintendo game out there. Alright guys, that's it for today. Those are the top Super Nintendo video games of... Oh, wait a second. Huh, I overlooked a game. Do we have time to consider it? I'm sure we can find a spot for it. I mean, it shouldn't be too hard. It says here it's an RPG. What, like Mario RPG? No? It says it's more like Dragon Warrior. Turn-based battles with no input whatsoever. You just choose your attack and wait? Well, that doesn't sound fun at all. It sounds terrible. And the number one Super Nintendo game of all time is? Now I know what some of you guys are thinking. Here's another Earthbound bandwagoner who's over-exaggerating this game more than it's worth. Trust me, I know, I was one of you guys. Everyone was always like, this game is awesome, this game's the best, where's Mother 3, wah! And when it came out on Wii U, we downloaded it because hey, it's a game that's worth an arm and a leg. For 10 bucks it must totally be worth it, right? Well, we got it, and I started playing it, and I gave up in the town you started. Now, keep in mind, I was in school at the time, I knew it was an RPG, I know RPGs take time, and remember, I don't like RPGs or grinding, and I don't like static fights, so I stopped. But this past summer, I decided, what the heck, I have some spare time, might as well see what the big deal is, muscle through. I went through it all, finished the game, and then I immediately started a new file and beat it all the way through again. I just had to experience it one more time. As a game, it sucks. The graphics? They look like prettier versions of NES graphics. Compared to games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, it's not even a fight. The music? There are some tracks I'll listen to here and there, but none that were on the same level of Link to the Past or Donkey Kong Country. A lot of this is due to the fact that the songs sound like the most basic tunes that the SNES could produce. Now I know that there's the electric guitar playing of Porky Means Business, which sounds really good, but the overall soundtrack just kind of felt simple. So what was it about this game that compelled me to play it back to back? Well, I think it was the fact that the game isn't a game, but rather an experience. From beginning to end, you become attached to these rather bland characters. They don't have much depth, but instead it allows you to fill in the blanks through what other characters tell you. It wasn't until the game was over that I realized that I had just experienced something amazing. So amazing that I'm currently, at the time of filming this video, I'm playing through it a third time. Now, Super Metroid. That's an amazing game. I've beaten it, multiple times. But never back to back. Link to the Past, I've beaten that game multiple times too, but always when I beat the game, I put it back on the shelf. None of those games impacted me so deeply that I felt compelled to play them through a second time, like immediately. Beat the game, roll the credits, start a new file. And for those reasons, Earthbound is truly worthy of being number one on this list. So that's my top 10 Super Nintendo games. Do you agree? Probably yes for some, probably no for others. So here are your champions.